as economists, we're always interested in incentives. And in the last few decades, the attention has focused to how do we design incentives in cases that are not market interactions. That is to say, if I hire someone, if I just pay them a salary, that doesn't give them very many incentives. But if I can design their contract in a slightly different way, then perhaps I can give them incentives to do exactly what I'd like them to do. So if we think about it, there are sort of two kinds of incentives that are important. One of them, so if I hire someone to do something, then my first concern is maybe they aren't going to do what I asked them to do. The second kind of problem that can come up in contract theory is where we need to get information from someone, or they or need to learn something that they know. So for the way we talk about this in contract theory is we say, suppose neither of those problems existed, and we call that a first best world. The first best world is characterized by what we call optimal risk sharing. It means that if your employee is very risk averse, then you make their pay not very closer to a flat wage, which has the least risk exposure. And if they're risk averse and you're risk averse, then you're going to share the risk in such a way that neither of you is overly bearing risk. And so a first best contract is sort of almost what you call a partnership. That is, if there were no incentive problems, what you would do is you would give your manager a fraction of the fund, essentially. So to provide someone incentives to work hard, what you should do is pay them, part of their fee should depend on their return minus the return of the benchmark. We call that the excess return. So if they do better than the benchmark, and let's say the benchmark is the S&P 500 index, so if their return ends up being higher, then you give them a bonus. If their return ends up being lower, then they take a hit in terms of their pay. One of the ironies of this is that when you, if the guy does undertake the effort to research this information, you're now at what we call a point of information asymmetry. That is, the person you've contracted with now knows more than you do about what needs to be done. And so then a second problem arises, and that is, are they using this information correctly? So we talked about the first best world. The second best world is where the guy doesn't have incentives to work hard, so you have to give him this bonus. Now we enter what we call the third best world, and what contract would matter there, where I also have to incentivize them to use the information correctly. So what we found in that case is it's actually kind of intuitive, although it turned out to be difficult to prove, and that is that when you go away from the first best contract, as you go away from optimal risk sharing, you give the guy incentives by exposing him to more risk, this benchmark excess return thing. And all things being equal, he doesn't like that. He would like to undo those incentives. And so what we found is that a manager facing this benchmark bonus type strategy would tend to underreport their information, or to act more timidly than their information would suggest. So we looked at how big a deal is that, and it turns out that it is not huge. What you have to do is offer a slightly bigger bonus in cases where, after the fact, it turns out that the manager was right. If the manager reports that this is going to be a very good year, and it turns out to be a very good year, then he should get an extra bonus above and beyond just the benchmark. If he says, actually, things are going to be really bad in these risky assets, we ought to go into cash, and he turns out to be right after the fact, then he gets a little bonus there also.